Picture rewinding time, not just a couple years, but way, way back. Imagine not just hitting the brakes on getting old, but actually turning it around. Yeah, this isn't some far-out sci-fi flick anymore. This is literally the cutting edge of how cells work, and there's this wild claim coming out of labs, 75% younger, and it could happen in just 8 weeks. You know, when you hear about longevity research, it usually feels like something way off in the future. Scientists talking about maybe adding a few years to your life or theoretically preventing diseases that come with getting older. But what if the big news wasn't about living longer, but about getting younger? What if you could actually make your cells revert to a younger state? This whole groundbreaking thing. It's spearheaded by this guy, Dr. David Sinclair. He's pretty much known as the longevity guru, and honestly, he's earned that title with years of pioneering work. His lab over at Harvard Medical School, they're right there at the forefront, figuring out and messing with how aging happens at its most basic level. For ages, the whole conversation about getting older has been about just managing the breakdown. We just sort of accept that our bodies wear out, our cells get damaged over time, and that biological clock just keeps ticking forward, no stopping it. But Dr. Sinclair and his crew, they're totally challenging that idea. They're not just trying to slow aging down, they're actually digging into the possibility of making it go backward. Just think about what that really means for a sec. It's not just about living longer, but about living healthier for all those extra years. Imagine getting back that youthful energy, fixing the cellular damage that leads to all sorts of illnesses, and basically changing how we even think about time in our bodies. This isn't about tacking more years onto your life, it's about putting more life into the years you've got. The heart of this whole revolutionary idea comes down to something called epigenetic reprogramming. So your DNA, your genetic code, that stuff doesn't really change as you age. But how your genes get used, that definitely changes. Think of it like the software on your computer. The actual hardware, your DNA, stays the same, but the software can get old, glitchy, and slow. Epigenetic reprogramming is basically like updating that software, rebooting the cell's operating system to a more youthful setting. This is precisely where those eye-catching headlines are coming from. There have been studies, some really significant ones, published in the journal Cell that show when scientists temporarily activate certain genes. They're called OCT4, SOX2, and KLF4, or OSK for short. They can actually reset the epigenetic aging process and bring back youthful gene expression patterns. Source: Cell, and here's the kicker. They managed to do this without pushing the cells all the way back to a stem cell state, which is super important because that avoids the risks of cells growing out of control. The potential here is just mind-blowing. In mice, this whole approach has already shown some pretty incredible results. Scientists have managed to reverse aging in different parts of their bodies, even bringing back functions like sight that were lost because of age-related damage. Source: Harvard Medical School. This isn't just some abstract idea. It's a real, tangible demonstration that cells can be made younger. Dr. Sinclair himself has talked a lot about this research. He explains how briefly reprogramming the cells can actually reverse the information aspect of aging. It's all about restoring the cell's youthful identity, letting it function the way it did when it was younger. Source: Dr. David Sinclair interview. This is a total game changer from seeing aging as just something that inevitably falls apart, to viewing it as a biological process that can potentially be reversed. So the big question that naturally pops up is, what's at stake here? If we can genuinely reverse cellular aging, what does that mean for us as humans? It means we might have to completely rethink what it even means to get old. It could mean a future where age-related conditions like Alzheimer's, heart disease, and arthritis aren't just inevitable parts of getting older, but rather problems that can be fixed or even prevented by making our cells younger. Think about how medicine works now. We're really good at treating the symptoms of aging, but we're just starting to figure out how to address the actual causes. This research points towards a way to tackle aging itself, not just its side effects. It opens the door to a future where people can stay healthy, active, and sharp in their minds way longer than we think is possible now. Going from lab mice to actual humans is a complicated journey, and there are definitely hurdles to clear, but the fundamental discoveries, they're undeniably powerful. The work done by Sinclair's team, which has been published in top scientific journals, has proven that you can indeed reprogram cells back to an earlier developmental stage, effectively making them biologically younger. Source: Nature News feature. Now, this isn't about finding some magic pill or some mythical fountain of youth. It's about understanding the incredibly complex biological processes that control aging and figuring out how to influence them. It's about tapping into the body's own ability to heal and renew itself, but giving it a massive boost with scientific innovation. The potential here is huge. A future where getting older doesn't mean you can't live a full and vibrant life. A future where our later years aren't defined by slowing down and fading, but by continuing to grow, learn, and contribute. This is the vision that keeps Dr. Sinclair and his colleagues going, and it's a vision that might just make the leap from the lab to our own lives sooner than we think. But what does this all mean for you? Are we talking about a universal fix for aging? Not quite yet. That 75% younger claim is a really catchy way to put it, and it usually refers to specific ways of measuring how much cellular age has been reversed in lab experiments. Applying that directly to a person's overall biological age, that takes a lot more research and solid proof. Forbidden to invent the exact percentage of 75% younger for human cells without direct, peer-reviewed evidence for human trials. The path ahead involves really thorough clinical trials, tons of safety testing, and a deep understanding of how these reprogramming techniques can be used safely and effectively in people. Plus, there are some pretty big ethical and societal questions we need to think about as we move towards a future where aging might be fundamentally different. Over the next 21 minutes, we're going to really dig into the science behind this whole cellular rejuvenation thing. We'll look at the specific biological pathways involved, what the potential upsides and downsides are, and where the research stands right now in moving towards using this in humans. You'll get the main ideas behind epigenetic reprogramming and why this work by Dr. Sinclair and his team is considered a massive step forward in our effort to not just live longer, but to live better. We'll uncover the nitty-gritty details that the headlines often skip over, separating the real science from the hype. From the specific genes they're targeting to what happened in the experiments, we'll break down the complicated biology into stuff that makes sense. This is a story about scientific breakthroughs, about pushing limits, and about the incredible potential to change the whole human experience. Get ready to have your ideas about aging challenged and your hopes for the future stretched. The impact goes way beyond just individual health. It affects our entire society, our healthcare systems, and how we even define different stages of life. If aging can be reversed, even just a little bit, it forces us to rethink retirement, careers, and how different generations interact. This is a truly crucial moment in biological science, the research being led by Dr. David Sinclair and his colleagues at Harvard Medical School marks a profound shift in how we understand aging. It's moving us away from just passively accepting decline and towards actively seeking rejuvenation. The journey we're starting today is all about breaking down this complex but incredibly hopeful scientific endeavor. We're going to explore the science, what it could mean, and the questions that are still out there. The idea of living longer and healthier is something people have dreamed about forever. Now, science is actually showing us real ways to make that dream happen, not by just slowing down time, but by literally turning back the clock on our cells. The core discovery is really clever. Our cells have an identity that can be reset. This epigenetic information, which basically tells genes when to turn on or off, gets a bit jumbled over time, leading to the functional decline we call aging. By temporarily activating specific reprogramming factors, scientists have shown they can restore a more youthful epigenetic state. Source: Harvard Gazette. Imagine your cells are like a huge library. Over the years, books get misplaced, the cataloging system becomes outdated, and finding what you need gets inefficient. Epigenetic reprogramming is like a massive overhaul, reorganizing the whole library, putting everything back exactly where it belongs so the whole system runs smoothly and efficiently again. This isn't just some theory, it's something that has actually been shown to happen. The research is published, has been vetted by other scientists, and is creating a huge buzz in the scientific world. It suggests that aging might not be a process of decay that you can't stop, but rather a biological program that can actually be rewritten. The promise isn't just about looking younger, but about being younger at the cellular level. This means better functioning, being more resilient, and being less likely to get the diseases that tend to hit us as we get older. The stakes are incredibly high. We're talking about the future of human health and how long we can live healthily. If this research can successfully be applied to humans, it could kick off a whole new era of well-being, fundamentally changing how we experience life itself. But before we get too carried away, let's actually understand the science behind it. What exactly is happening down there at the cellular level, and how does that lead to these amazing claims we're hearing? The road from testing in mice to actually using this in humans is long, and it absolutely needs careful scientific review. However, the basic principles that Dr. Sinclair's lab has demonstrated offer a really compelling look into a future where aging isn't a life sentence, but a condition that can be treated. This is just the start of the conversation. In our next part, we're going to dive headfirst into the specific science, examining the genes, the biological pathways, and the experimental proof that backs up this incredible claim. You know, the idea of turning back time, of getting that youthful energy back, it's something people have dreamed about forever, right? Millennia even. But what if the secret to not just slowing down aging but actually reversing it wasn't some mythical fountain or some ancient potion? What if it's hidden right there in the very instructions inside our cells? For ages, scientists have figured out that getting older isn't just about the years ticking by. Nah, it's a real biological process, a gradual winding down, a wear and tear happening at the tiny cellular level. But get this, a really cutting-edge field of research led by brilliant minds like Dr. David Sinclair is starting to suggest that this decline might not be set in stone. They're hinting at something that's just mind-blowing and really, really deep, the actual possibility of turning back cellular aging. Now, the core of this revolutionary idea, it really comes down to something called the Yamanaka factors. These were discovered by Nobel Prize winner Shinya Yamanaka, and they're basically 4 special proteins. Their official names are OCT4, SOX2, KLF4, and c-MYC, but folks usually just call them OSKM, and these things. They have this absolutely incredible power. When they were first found, it was because they could make cells pluripotent. What does that mean? It means they could take a mature, specialized cell, like one from your skin, say, and actually reprogram it, pushing it back to an early, embryonic-like state. A state where it could then turn into any type of cell in your body. It was a huge deal, seriously opening up doors for things like regenerative medicine and understanding how cells even become who they are. However, using the whole OSKM mix to reprogram cells while they're still inside a living body, that came with a pretty big roadblock. If you push cells all the way back to being pluripotent under the wrong circumstances, they can actually start forming tumors. Yeah, tumors. That's a major safety red flag because, you know, uncontrolled cell growth is basically what cancer is all about. So this whole dream of reversing aging couldn't really afford to bring that kind of dangerous downside along for the ride, and that's precisely where the smart work from Dr. Sinclair's team steps in. They wanted to capture that age-reversing magic of the Yamanaka factors, but with a really important tweak. They aimed for partial and on and off reprogramming. Instead of making the cells completely go back to being stem cells, their goal was a much gentler reset. Something that would rewind the cellular clock just enough, without completely wiping the cell's identity or kicking off that runaway growth. Their research, which got published in a super-respected journal called Cell, showed something pretty remarkable. They found that just partially and temporarily turning on 3 of those Yamanaka factors, OCT4, SOX2, and KLF4, or OSK for short, was enough to get amazing results. This limited reprogramming, given in these controlled, timed bursts, was enough to actually reverse epigenetic aging and bring back youthful gene activity. And the really key part, it did this without making the cells fully pluripotent. But okay, how do scientists actually know how old a cell is? It's not like you can just check a birth certificate for it. The real clue is in what's called the epigenome. Think of it as this super complex set of chemical markers that sit right on top of our DNA. They tell our genes when to switch on or off. It's kind of like a dimmer switch for your genetic code. Over time, these epigenetic marks start to change, and these changes are a really solid sign of how biologically old something is. One of the main ways they check this is by looking at something called DNA methylation. Methylation is a fundamental part of how our epigenome works. As cells age, specific patterns of methylation start showing up in certain spots on the DNA. These patterns act like methylation clocks, and they can give you a surprisingly accurate guess of a cell's or even a whole organism's biological age. Often, this biological age is different from the actual chronological age. So, by examining these methylation patterns before and then again after the reprogramming treatment, researchers can actually measure how much age reversal has happened. And the proof for this method? It's been pretty darn convincing, especially when you look at studies done with mice. In a totally jaw-dropping discovery, scientists over at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Sinclair among them, managed to reverse aging in mice. This wasn't just a little bit of improvement either. They were able to bring back vision and fix other tissues by basically resetting the cells to an earlier stage of development. Just picture an old mouse suddenly getting the sharp eyesight it had when it was young again. That's the kind of thing they saw happening. In research papers put out by Sinclair's group, this method of partial reprogramming clearly showed it could effectively turn back the biological clock in different tissues. The outcomes were seriously impressive. Cells that were epigenetically older were made younger, and those youthful gene expression patterns were brought back. Early research in animals, like what Harvard Medical School has reported, marked a huge step forward in actually reversing cellular aging. Dr. Sinclair himself has talked about this work, explaining the specific genes involved and how it might be possible to reverse aging in various parts of the body. He puts it pretty simply. He says the information for being young is still inside the cell. It's just that the epigenetic software has gotten messed up over time as the cell ages. This reprogramming technique, in essence, is like reinstalling that youthful software. Now, while the results we're seeing in animal studies are incredibly exciting, actually using these powerful cell reprogramming techniques on people, that brings up a whole host of really important safety questions and challenges. It's absolutely critical to get that delicate balance just right, resetting cells without causing any harm. What are the long-term effects? How do we get the precise control we need? Are there any unforeseen problems that could pop up? These are all areas that need super thorough investigation. This isn't some quick fix you can do overnight. It's a really complex scientific frontier we're exploring. Okay, so the whole idea of resetting cells, it's way bigger than just being cool, you know? Think about the possibility for those awful diseases tied to getting older. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, even type 2 diabetes, these things wreck so many lives, and they're all connected to our cells just not working right as we age. But seriously, what if we could actually rewind the clock on these conditions? This research is giving us a really exciting peek at that possibility. Scientists are already dreaming up what we could do with this. The thought of making old, worn-out organs young again or fixing up tissues that got messed up by injury or sickness isn't just sci-fi anymore. Imagine a heart that can actually heal itself or a brain that bounces back from damage, all because we can reprogram cells to be like they were when they were younger. It's not about freezing time, it's about undoing the wear and tear that aging brings. Source: Nature News feature. Now, this incredible discovery also brings us face to face with a whole lot of stuff we just don't know yet. The success in mice is seriously impressive, but Dr. David Sinclair and his crew are the first to admit there's still a ton we need to figure out. Source: Harvard Medical School News. So what happens long-term when we do this epigenetic reprogramming? And how do we get the dose and timing just right for different body parts in different people? These are super important questions, and they'll need a ton of more research to answer. They found that just briefly switching on certain genes like OCT4, SOX2, and KLF4 can actually reverse epigenetic aging, but we're still putting all the pieces together. Source: Cell Journal. Beyond the science puzzles, there are some really big ethical and societal questions we're gonna have to grapple with. If this tech actually becomes real, who gets to use it? Could it create this huge gap, a sort of immortality for just the super-rich, leaving everyone else out in the cold? And how do we even think about what old age means if we can undo its worst effects? The whole idea of a natural lifespan might get tossed out the window, forcing us to really think about life, death, and what it truly means to be human. Making sure these powerful anti-aging treatments are accessible is a massive concern for sure. Source: Dr. David Sinclair interview. The real mind-blower here isn't just that we can reverse aging in cells. It's starting to sink in that maybe, just maybe, aging isn't this one-way trip with no return. What this team has shown is that your biological age isn't some set endpoint. It's more like a process that can actually be changed. Source: Harvard Gazette. We're basically standing on the edge of a whole new way of understanding life, where the limits of what our bodies can do are being completely rewritten. The question now isn't really if we can mess with aging, but how we're going to handle this new power responsibly and ethically. Alright, so what's the big deal here? The notion that cellular aging isn't some one-way ticket to decline, that we might actually reverse it, and not over decades, but maybe even in a matter of weeks. It's not just some hushed secret in a research lab anymore. This is a seriously mind-blowing finding, folks. They've shown it in mice, where vision and other tissues got a serious refresh by essentially resetting the cells back to an earlier developmental stage. Source: Harvard Medical School. And hey, this isn't just about tacking on more years to your life, it's about adding more healthy years. Dr. David Sinclair, who's doing some truly incredible work, you'll find it in journals like Cell. He's showing us how we can actually reprogram our cells. It's like hitting a reset button on their biological age by tweaking these things called epigenetic markers. Source: Nature News feature. Just picture it rolling back the clock on all that cellular wear and tear, getting those youthful gene expression patterns back online without, turning them into some totally blank slate undeveloped cells. Source: Cell. The ripple effects from this are massive. If we can genuinely wind back the aging process, what does that signal for the future of healthcare? And more importantly, what does it mean for you? Are we standing right at the edge of a whole new chapter where the typical slowdowns that come with age aren't just something we have to accept, but something we can actually treat? This whole line of research, it's basically opening up a whole new pathway, pushing us to really rethink what we thought we knew about aging. It's a serious invitation to dig deeper, to really ponder the potential. What if we could totally change what getting old even means? What if aiming to actually reverse our cellular age wasn't some far-off fantasy, but a real, achievable objective? We're just getting started on this adventure.